Hey arty friends, so today we're going to unbox the Finetec transparent watercolors and the Finetec opaque watercolors. I got these on a deal on Massdrop and I am super excited to try them out for you guys and let you guys know how they handle. So I really love the Finetec Gold and the Finetec Pearlescent colors. So I'm really excited to check out their transparent watercolors and their opaque watercolors. These are somewhat new. They're not like new, like released yesterday new, but they're fairly new. And these came in about a week ago. So the Massdrop deal is probably no longer open. They both arrived shrink wrapped, but minus the cardboard sleeves I've seen on them when I see them in art supply stores like David's Art Supply. However, the back, wait, that's not even a sticker. That's just a piece of paper. All right, well, this is the piece of paper we've got. It is printed on both sides. These are the 24 pan sets. And inside the opaque watercolors, we get light yellow, light orange, light red, deep crimson, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, leaf green, sea green, Prussian blue, ultramarine, umber, black, lemon yellow, Indian yellow, violet, cobalt blue, turquoise blue, French green, magenta, cyan blue, olive, flesh tone, gold, and silver. What I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm probably going to end up taping the tags to the front of the box. Yeah, it is screened, but this is a lot easier to see and so much more inviting. So these are really interesting to me in that these are the double tiered trays. It comes with what looks like a fairly inexpensive camel hair brush. I wonder if these are knockoffs because these really look like the Pelikan and the Grumbacher Academy, like a lot. Like I will probably do a side-by-side comparison. Maybe these aren't the official set. How weird is that? Okay, so they are on double-decker trays. Actually, if one of you have this set, let me know in the comments below and that'll be a huge help. Let me know if this looks right to you, basically. So we're gonna take a look at the opaque set for right now. Both trays are removable and these pop out, and that's actually in keeping with the other set, which is actually all metal. This is metal and plastic. Okay, so no, that's what it's supposed to look like. Got a picture here from Amazon. That is the single layer. I have a picture here from, I believe, Etsy. That is the double layer. And I have here the link for the Massdrop listing. So it is what it is. This is how it looks like. I'm just really taken aback because it really looks like, I mean, on one hand, it really looks like other opaque watercolor sets. On the other hand, it just looks cheaper than what I've come to expect from Finetec. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the transparent one, and then we're gonna start talking some stats. The colors inside the transparent set are lemon, yellow, Indian yellow, orange, vermilion, permanent red, carmine, violet, ultramarine, cobalt blue, Prussian blue, turquoise blue, blue-green, French green, yellow green, green oxide, raw umber, Van Dyke brown, burnt sienna, Indian red, yellow ochre, flesh color, Payne's gray, and lamp black. And these are very similar. There is no tube of white paint, so it's really just these colors here. And they seem a little bit opaque for translucent watercolors. So it'll be interesting to see how these two swatch. I return with a little bit more information. So these were purchased in the Massdrop Finetec Bundle. So you get 24 opaque colors, 24 transparent colors. The reason I express concern that these might be knockoffs is twofold. One, these normally come, well actually threefold. One, these normally come in cardboard box sleeves, and other images on the internet show the cardboard box sleeve. So other sellers are selling them in their sleeves. 2, these are the old packaging. The new packaging uses all metal tins like this newer set here. And it also features white containers, square containers like this. And also, Massdrop is not above selling gray market things or above selling knockoff things. Now, I don't normally buy from Massdrop because, quite honestly, they just don't have enough art supplies for me to be that interested, and I'm not looking to buy endless sets of Copics. But on occasion, they have something I'm interested in, so I buy it, but I buy it knowing there's a chance it could be a knockoff. And I don't want to review something that is a knockoff for you guys like it is the real deal. That's not fair to the company, that's not fair to you, that's not fair to me. I'm the one who's taking a risk by buying from a site like that, but you guys shouldn't deal with confusion because of that. So keep all that in mind, but I think these are the legit deal. So I paid about $40 for the bundle, and I have a link in the description below for the listing that I purchased this from, but it's no longer going on anymore. However, you can get your own as individual sets. You can get the transparent colors for $26.97 on Amazon, and you can get the opaque colors for $27.74 on Amazon. Finetec is a German company that recently rebranded under the Kohl-Iro name. They're iridescent colors, which is what they're really known for. It's why a lot of people will buy Finetec watercolors, because their iridescent colors are just super, super beautiful. Their iridescent colors are just gum arabic and mica with no fillers. I could not find information about their opaque or their transparent watercolors to that regard. So there seems to be 36 total opaque watercolors available. The newer box features a total metal tin with removable pans similar to the set I just showed you guys, and the site doesn't have anything about their transparent watercolors, and that is the official site, and you can find that in the description below. So there's not a lot of information available in English in terms of like official information available in English about Finetec watercolors outside of their use as, you know, calligraphy watercolors. So I am not a calligrapher. I am not going to be reviewing these as a calligrapher. I am a watercolor artist, and I make watercolor comics. And you can check mine out at 7inchcarrot.tumblr.com or 7inchcarrot.com. So my focus is really on watercolors for illustration, watercolors for comics, and what will work within those regards. So I don't paint these huge pieces. If I paint big pages, they're broken up into panels. So I really paint smaller illustrations. So I like watercolors that lend themselves to that. And I have no idea if either of these are good watercolors for that, but I want to find that out today. For today's review, I want to accomplish 3 things. I want to go over the individual watercolor sets with you, examine what comes in each set. I want to swatch both sets individually, and then finally, I want to do a comparative swatching. Since these are larger watercolor sets, I am going to be swatching the individual set on Blick Premier watercolor paper. As you can see, it's 100% cotton rag, block bound. Really like this paper. For the head-to-head comparison swatch, I am going to swatch on Canson's Moulin de Roy. This is a beautiful cotton rag paper. I think it handles very similarly to Arches. I love it. Feels a little bit of a waste to use it for swatches, but it's the only paper I currently have that is large enough to actually fit both sets at 11.8 by 15.7 inches. I recently have a new technique for swatching that relies on using alcohol markers. So I have 3 alcohol markers here. I have a dark gray, a red, and a blue. And what's great about these is I don't have to have any cure time. There's no chance of the watercolor resisting the ink, and I can get a gauge for how it's going to layer over other colors. So I'm going to need to be able to fit 24 on here, which is a little bit of a challenge. Now, typically when I do swatches, I like to do sort of a mass tone and then a gradiated wash, and then sometimes end with another mass tone. I know some artists like to do swatches on the squares. And those look really nice. For me, that's just not enough room for me to get an idea of how they would handle. So this is my preferred method. And we're gonna start with the opaque set. So this is the opaque set, and they aren't particularly opaque. Now, I really want to know what the distinction between opaque watercolors are and what gouache is, because I always thought gouache was an opaque watercolor. There's a bit of opacity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow these to dry, and then I'm going to apply a second layer just at the top so we can get a mass tone. Another thing, I have a lot. For someone who doesn't do opaque watercolors, I've looked at a lot of different opaque watercolors or things that kind of fall under that category. I've looked at Pelican, I've looked at Grumbacher, I've looked at Shingansai, I've looked at fan color, I've looked at studio gouache, which is probably just fan color. Would you guys like to see a big overview of all the different sort of portable gouaches / opaque watercolors that are available on the market? If so, let me know in the comments below. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys have to say. Another thing, I didn't pre-activate these. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give them a little bit better of a shot. And I'm gonna go ahead and pre-activate them. Often I do, but you know, with a set like this, I wasn't sure. Some brands don't react super well. However, the Finetec iridescents always react particularly well. So maybe giving them a chance to kind of soak up some water will kind of improve our, oh no, that was a mistake, gross. Let's see if we can't kind of clean that off, yeah. But see if we can't improve our chances of getting some nice opacity. And another thing, for those of you who use opaque watercolor, why do you use it instead of gouache in tubes? And what applications do you use it for? Link me to your work, link me to your channel. I'm really, really curious about this. And rather than Googling around and confusing myself, which is what I did with the fan color video, and I found, of course, James Gurney's wonderful, wonderful blog. So, of course, I'll probably have to link that for you guys now. But if there are other resources, if there are other creators working with opaque watercolors, I would love to see how you handle them. So please feel free to drop your links in the comments below if this applies to you, and I'll be happy to check it out. Letting these paints soak up and activate has definitely increased the opacity a bit. These are really bright, vivid colors. And what's neat is that the gold and the silver in this set, while not exactly like their iridescent, aren't bad at all. So I'm gonna give this a chance to dry and then we'll check it out. So next I'm going to do a lift test. So I'm using the same synthetic brush that I used originally, and I'm just going to scrub and try lifting up the paint. Somewhat unsurprisingly, at least for me, a lot of these, or in fact all of the opaque watercolor colors in this set are very prone to lifting. And I think that's because a lot of these opaque watercolors use chalk or talc to give them their opacity. Now this set also came with a tube of white and a camel hair watercolor brush. I'll go ahead and try to bring this brush up to a point, but camel hair is a very inexpensive fiber. It's not really, oh, sorry, had sizing in it and it felt really slimy. So I will just use this camel hair brush here, which is small and fairly floppy, to go ahead and test the Deck Vice Opaque White. And it's one of those Pierce caps. And this is probably gouache, like actual gouache. Okay, so we've got a little bit there. And one would use this to mix with these opaque colors in order to get pastels or to increase the opacity. And when I do the field test for this, we can play around with doing it like that. So yeah, it's your fairly typical white gouache. Some coverage to it, not super strong. Let's try. Just kind of lazily mixing it on the paper. You can kind of see the difference between the two colors. Let's zoom in so you guys can see a little bit better. So here's something fun. These color pans, unlike some of the other ones on the market, I'm going to try to pop one out. They don't have the names written on the colors. Now we have a list of the color names here on whatever this is, but they're not actually in like 100% order of what you get. I think this is the dividing line between the two halves, but it doesn't correspond one-to-one. So I'm trying to label these colors, and at deep crimson, which is, I think, this magenta here, that's what threw me. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, yes, I can probably guess which color is which. I really don't like doing that. And when you reorder, they don't necessarily show the colors. They just, have the names. So that's definitely a little bit frustrating. Not my favorite thing. Let's take a look at, the iridescent Finetec's, the gold ones, for example. They don't have that written on them either. So, I don't know. I really don't like when companies don't label their colors. It's even if it's just like made up color names, I don't like it. So I'm going to now spend my time best guessing, and I may be inaccurate and I apologize for that, but I will check back in with you guys once I've done that. All right, I think I have the colors labeled correctly. As you guys can see on this one here, I took 3 attempts. This is why I like it when companies label their colors. So we've got light yellow, light orange, light red, magenta, violet, ultramarine, turquoise blue, something I skipped here. Thought I got them all. Well, to be frank, I don't know what it is. I looked at the list multiple times. Couldn't really see anything that it might be. Again, these are best guesses. Leaf green, yellow, ochre, burnt sienna, black, lemon yellow, Indian yellow, deep crimson, cobalt blue, question mark, cyan blue, question mark. This I would think is more cerulean, and there is no cerulean on this list. And this could be cyan, because cyan is sometimes like a blue-green or almost an aqua color. So I had 3 guesses at this one. I landed on sea green, French green, but honestly, this might be French green. That's kind of like racing red. So as an American, I hadn't really come across, racing green. I hadn't really come across the term racing green. So of course, I don't have a mental image of what it looks like, but apparently it's a dark green. That's why we label our colors: olive green, umber, flesh tone, silver, and gold. All right, so I am going to remove these from the block and I'm going to get cracking on those transparent watercolors. All right, we have moved on to the fine transparent watercolors section of this evening. This set is very similar to the first. It features the same camel hair brush. Go ahead and remove the sizing from that. And I apologize if I sound out of breath. I was literally just dancing to Knock to Knock. We have 2 trays of watercolors in a metal and plastic housing. Both trays are removable. We do not have the opaque white watercolor. So I've already prepared my swatch sheet here, making room for my watercolors. These are also on removable little cakes. You can also order refills for this, and I will have links for both. These are also not labeled. Awesome. So the colors we have in this set are, theoretically, lemon, yellow, Indian yellow, orange, vermilion, permanent red, carmine, actually it looks like they're in order. Carmine, violet, ultramarine, cobalt blue, Prussian blue, turquoise blue. These are in order. My other set wasn't. And both are wrapped. What the heck? Blue green, French green. Now I'm going to finally learn what French green looks like. Yellow green, green oxide, raw umber, Van Dyke brown, and I'm off camera. I'm so sorry. Since I know that these are actually in order, I'll just move them over and go over them with you guys one more time. So lemon, yellow, Indian yellow, orange, vermilion, permanent red, carmine, violet, ultramarine, cobalt blue, Prussian blue, turquoise blue, blue green, French green, yellow green, green oxide, raw umber, Van Dyke brown, burnt sienna, Indian red, yellow ochre, flesh color, Payne's gray, and lamp black. I think I like this selection of colors a little bit better than what they had in the opaque set. So my swatch test is going to go the same way. I actually prepared for it not to all fit on the same line this time. See, I do learn my lessons. And I'm just going to go ahead and start swatching for you guys. Now, these are transparent watercolors. We are looking out for opacity, but opacity isn't a plus or a minus. I dare say I like all of the colors in the translucent set better than the colors in the opaque set. It seems like a better color selection. Now I'm just going to do some mass tone swatches. And unfortunately that yellow is a little dirty. Let me see if I can get something a little bit nicer. This seems like a watercolor set that contains a fair amount of optical brighteners, but really the only way that I can know for sure is by putting it to the field test. I'm going to do that in a separate video, since I like walking people through how I handle the materials, and honestly, it's enough content to be its own video. These colors seem to activate a little bit faster than the opaque watercolors we just swatched. The colors also seem a little bit more brilliant. After everything dries, I'm going to show you guys, but the opaque sets seem to dry a little muddy and a little chalky, which isn't really that big of a surprise. Now, I did not manage my room effectively, so I'm going to have to start doing swatches at the top, kind of breaking up the palette order. I want to point out that all of these watercolor swatchings, all of these watercolor comparisons, all of these watercolor field tests, these all consume a lot of resources. And the only way I'm able to continue doing these videos is with the support and help of my patrons over on Patreon. So I want to just take a moment to sincerely thank them for their support and for their interest. Their questions often inspire future videos. And the funds from my Patreon, more often than not, either go to pay guest writers for my blog, or they go to purchase the materials for these sort of reviews, either the products themselves or the papers I test on. So I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for their support, because that's really helped make this possible. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to go over the tops of them and just kind of reestablish those colors. At least these swatches have dried. I'm going to go ahead and start relayering things. All of these have dried. I'm going to go ahead and do the lift test and then label them. All right, so all of our swatches have dried. I think I prefer the translucent watercolors to the opaque watercolors. They just seem to handle a little bit better. You definitely can get actually quite a bit of opacity with these. In a second layer, most of them are moderately opaque, and I bet if I continue to stir up and mix up the paint, I could get it really opaque on here. All of them did lift to some degree, although there is a bit of staining, so you're not going to get back to paper white. They do seem to have some optical brighteners in them. I'll probably know a little bit more for certain once we get around to doing the field test. And the colors we have here are lemon, yellow, Indian yellow, orange, vermilion, permanent red, carmine violet, ultramarine, cobalt blue, Prussian blue, turquoise blue, blue green, French green, yellow green, green oxide, raw umber, Van Dyke brown. Here's where I think they might have gotten switched. This seems more like an Indian red, but it is supposedly burnt sienna. This seems more like burnt sienna, but it seems more like Indian red. Yellow oxide, flesh color, Payne's gray, and lamp black. And again, this is why we label our paints. So people know, because some of these colors, it could go either way. Like this, I would not say that's Payne's gray. I would say that's like Davies gray or Dove gray. But it's supposedly Payne's gray. In my experience, Payne's gray is almost kind of a neutral tint color, a blue gray, really pretty. Not necessarily so. These also seem like they would turn to mud if you do a lot of layers, if you do a lot of glazing, if you do a lot of mixing. So I'm not going to do a mud test today, but I am going to go ahead and do the head-to-head comparison we talked about. I apologize for the bit of mess that is in the picture. This is going to take up my entire desk, and I do use this desk to make art, so it is what it is. Over here on the left, we have the translucent watercolors. Over here on the right, we have the opaque watercolors. I'm going to do one set at the top and one set at the bottom, or at least that's my plan. 24 is, as I said before, a really hard number to fit on one sheet of paper. So we are going to go ahead and do our lines. Also, me using alcohol marker like this, I used to use permanent marker. Neither of them are archival, but I think they're good enough for the purposes of demonstration and getting a good idea of what the swatches look like. The pigment-based pins that I used for a while are more archival, but they do have a bit of a resist, so it never really gave me as good an idea as I wanted of opacity. So, you know, I'm always trying to find a compromise that will work. All right, so I have 48 colors to swatch, y'all. So we're gonna start with the translucent set, and I'm going to swatch them the same way I swatched the other two swatches. And before I get too far into it, I'm just going to add some water to both just so that they are at full strength. So these haven't quite dried yet, but they are dry enough for me to flip the sheet over and go ahead and begin swatching the opaque watercolors now. So these took a really long time to dry. Last night the opaque watercolors were taking like 2 hours to dry. So I went to bed, I let them dry overnight. Next, we are going to do the lift tests. And I mean, obviously you guys kind of have an idea of how they lift already because we've already kind of started that. But I'm gonna do it again just so that it's all in one place. I'm not gonna label the colors because with the opaque set, maybe I will. Maybe I will label the colors. So color labeling and lifting, and I'll check back in with you guys. All right, I have got them all labeled. I've got them all lift tested. The transparent, oh, and I should point out again, these have dried overnight. So they were completely dry. The overnight one, the transparent ones, sorry, were much less likely to lift, with some colors being fairly lift resistant, but you know, some still lifting, though not as much as they did last night. The opaque colors are still very prone to lifting. I don't think any of them were lift resistant. I also found out something very interesting, at least to me. I had labeled on top of my swatches, and when I went to lift, it lifted up my labels as well. And I labeled with a Sakura micron. So microns are not waterproof if you've done them on top of like a ground of some sort. So like watercolor paint or something, they'll be just as likely to lift as the paint itself. So I have one last test I want to do, and that is where I compare the gold and silver to the Finetec that I own. So this is not really a silver, it's a blue-gray, but it's about the same color as their silver. And I've got the two golds here. So on this side are the gold and silver from the Finetec Opaque set. Here is the silver from my pearlescent set, and here is an open stock gold. And I'm going to go ahead and activate these with lots and lots and lots of water. You guys already noticed that the Finetec iridescents do have a bit of a wavy texture to them. I guess that's for aesthetics because the other Finetecs that I've tested today don't have that. So I'm going to start with the opaque Finetecs. Really swoosh around the color, try to pick it up. And that's one layer. Gonna do the same now for the silver. already it seems much more opaque. And now the gold. All right, I'll give these a chance to dry. You guys can probably see that the Finetec iridescent pearlescent paints are a little bit more opaque, whereas the Finetec Opaque watercolors are a little more translucent. We're going to try giving these a second layer. And just really gob it on. I'll go ahead and do a second layer of the Finetec pearlescents as well. These are a little harder. They take a little more time to activate and they take a little more scrubbing, but the results are really, really nice. I may end up lifting some of the fire layer, unfortunately. So these double layers of opaque watercolors, the opaque Finetec's have not dried yet. These are really slow to dry. I don't know what it is, but the water always seems to get sucked over to one side. And that's something I've noticed with watercolor that use a lot of optical brighteners, is that the talc or the calcium or whatever they're using in that particular brand always seems to hold onto the water for a really long time. However, the glittery, glimmery, iridescent Finetec's are dry and they look really nice. So I'm going to get a close-up for you guys and try to catch the light on them. After 2 layers, the metallic or pearlescent Finetec's are pretty much completely opaque. After 2 layers, the opaque Finetec's in gold and silver are still fairly see-through. So we have reached the end of our Finetec comparison journey. I really am not a fan of the opaque watercolors. They're not any different at all from the other brands that I have reviewed. And if you're interested in seeing a big overarching comparison, let me know in the comments below, because I have like 5 different brands of opaque watercolors. And also, if you know how opaque watercolors are supposed to differ from gouache, and differ from transparent watercolors, if they do differ from gouache, let me know that as well, because as it is, they just seem like kind of a stopgap before people are comfortable using gouache. The transparent watercolors are okay. They're just really not exciting, and for the price I paid for them, I am kind of nonplussed about them. To be honest, the Como Rebi, the Massdrop Como Rebi set costs about the same amount, and I like that set better. And you get 40 colors, and you get metallics, and you get neons. But you know, the proof's going to be in the field test pudding, which is coming up. I'm going to do 2 individual field tests for both of these sets. What really struck me, though, is just how disappointed I am, because compared to their beautiful iridescent watercolors, these are just not nearly as good. Neither of these sets is as good as these beautiful iridescent, pearlescent, or metallic watercolors that they make. So if you love these, unfortunately, don't assume that these are going to be good or are going to suit your needs. So before I say goodbye, I am going to pop out, if I can easily, I'm going to pop out one of the transparent ones and just show you that the trays are, this is a little loose, but the trays are fairly compatible with one another. So if you have these sets and you'd like to travel, you could make like, this could be really good for calligraphers, because you can make a set that has like a mixture of all the colors you actually want to use. But considering that I paid $40 for the 2 sets on Massdrop, and they're usually $25 and up individually, that's a lot of money for a mix and match set when you can just use half pans and do the same thing, or attach magnets to the bottom of your watercolors and do the same thing. So I still really, really like their pearlescents and their metallics. I still really recommend these. I think these are great. I am not impressed by either of these sets. These are really super meh, and I don't understand how they're supposed to, how any opaque watercolor is really supposed to fit in my studio, but I hope you guys will enlighten me. These are okay, but if you already have like Winsor & Newton or Daniel Smith or Magello or Da Vinci or Holbein watercolors, anything like that, if you even have the Como Rebi set, you've already got a better watercolor set than these. So save your money. Don't get this set. It's just not gonna solve that problem for you guys. Now, let me know in the comments below. These are German watercolors. I have found that imported watercolors cost so much more in the US, that art supplies in general cost a lot more in the US. So let me know if you're in Germany or if you're in the EU, what have you, and you see these for a good price, if they're consistently sold at a lower price, because maybe they're good art supplies at that price. But at $26 for the set with 24 colors, and normally I tell you guys, you know, expect to pay $5 to $10 for 2 watercolors. It's just not doing it for me. It's just not good enough. There are other sets that are cheaper that I can get refills for, or I can refill from tubes that I'm just much more impressed by. So I hope you guys found this review helpful, useful, and informative. I hope I answered some questions. I hope I saved you guys some money. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. I'm always happy to hear from you, and I'm always happy to see how other artists handle their materials. If you have some answers about opaque watercolors for me, let me know that as well, because I'm really curious. And link me to some channels. Your own totally counts. Link me to some channels where artists use these kinds of watercolors to great effect. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like watercolors, stick around. I do a lot of watercolor reviews and demonstrations here on this channel. If you're looking for even more, head on over to natosoup.blogspot.com and check out my watercolor basics series. I am a watercolor comic artist, and I walk you through my watercolor comic process over there. And if you like comics, you should definitely check out my beautiful watercolor webcomic, 7-inch Kara, at 7inchkara.com and 7inchkara.tumblr.com. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you again really soon. Bye, guys.